Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've recorded meetings and conventions here in Southern California since 1998. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994, and I got sober in a small town called Santa Maria. I moved to Los Angeles when I had 5 years sober and started recording meetings shortly after I got here. In 2013, I started recording conventions. So please enjoy the channel. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Just click right down there. Thank you.
And now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Chris L.
I'm Chris, I'm an alcoholic. Really grateful to be here sober. Thank you, thanks Terry, for your talk. I remember the first time I spoke in Alcoholics Anonymous, I can't see anybody out there. It's really weird up here. I feel like I'm on the Tonight Show or some bad version of the Tonight Show. Good version of the Tonight Show, right? I remember I went to this, my cousin got sober, and it was in Westchester County. I was living in Boston, Massachusetts at the time. And I went down to visit him. He was kind of my sober guru and my Eskimo. And he was the one guy in the world that I didn't want to turn my will and my life over to. And, you know, it's funny when we get here, that desperation we have. And I remember, I'm not going to talk about the day I got struck sober, but I went down to visit this guy from Boston, and I went to his home group, and his home group was basically everybody there was like there were these sort of Nordic people. In the middle of, there were Swedes and Nords and all of these like very stern, severe, depressed, large alcoholics. White alcoholics. And they were alcoholics. They didn't want I didn't know this at the time, but my story is a lot about drugs and alcohol. I don't have an opinion on this, but I heard this priest once say that we're all running from something. We just use different color sneakers, and I used every color sneaker that you could find. But anyways, I went down there, and I was asked, I didn't know this at the time, when I got to his house, I was asked, he said, I got a great surprise for you. And I said, what's that? He goes, you're going to speak at my home group tomorrow night. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he goes, well, yeah, you are, because you don't turn down an AA request. And I said, okay. And I went in and I talked to these Nords, and I spent 35 minutes talking about LSD. And they were like, I mean, not like that. They weren't even like that. They were like stone cold, not a crack, not a thing, not a peep out of them. And at the end, it was like, and I was gone. And later, my cousin said to me, you know, they were a little upset by your qualification. But I stayed sober, and I assume they did too. You know, I've been sober 19 years, and that's the great thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I really did not want to come here tonight. You know, and it's funny. I think Jerry knew that because he asked me to speak about 3 weeks ago, and he goes, and I said, well, Jerry, I may be in New York, but I learned early on, I don't say no to an AA request. I don't think I ever have unless, you know, I'm out of town. And to be honest, well, anyways, I don't say no. And he calls me and he goes, so I want you to speak at Rodeo. I've never been to this meeting before. I was never here when it was over in Beverly Hills, and I've never been here to this group. I had no idea what this meeting was. I've heard about it forever. but I had no idea what it was. And he said, and he acted like it was a big honor. And like I should be really grateful that he was asking me to come here and speak. To me, it's a huge pain in the ass. And I don't like it. I get nervous. I don't want to do it. I don't know what I'm going to say. You know, I saw Jim P. over there, and I go, Jim, I don't know what to say. He goes, just turn it over to God. And, you know, I love you, Jim, and you're totally right, and you made me feel better in that moment. But you know what? I don't want to hear that either. So, in any event, so Jerry calls me up and he says, will you come over and speak at this meeting? And I said, oh, you know, I'm going to be in New York. And he goes, well, you know, I'm going to be out of town. I'm like, that's not my problem. Like, somehow him being out of town, he's got to lock me up right then and there. Alcoholics, okay? Do you get it? You get it, right? So he locks me up because I love Jerry and I do anything for him. And I do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous. So I put aside whatever change of plans I might come up with in the next week, because I'm good at that, you know. And I say yes. And so he calls me today from London, and he gets me on the phone. He goes, so Chris, you know, I just want you to have really fun tonight, and you know, it's at 7:45, and you go to West Home, and you make a right, and there's going to be a guy there. And 45 minutes on the phone telling me how to get here to make sure I get here. So I don't know what kind of faith he had in me that I was actually going to make it, but I made it. It's funny, like I was coming over here, and this is how crazy I am, and maybe some of you can identify with this. I heard a guy in Alcoholics Anonymous thank the speaker for wearing a suit once. And when I was coming over here, I heard that guy in my head. Okay? So I started to obsess about what I was going to wear. Should I wear a suit? What kind of meeting is it? You know, am I being disrespectful to Alcoholics Anonymous by dressing like this, which is the way I always dress? And then I started to think, and I was like, no, f that, man. I'm going to just show up as me. I respect Alcoholics Anonymous more than anything more than anything in my life. I respect Alcoholics Anonymous. This thing has saved my life. So if I show up like this, it's not a sign of disrespect. Plus, I can't fit into any other clothes I have because I'm fat. I eat, you know, all the other addictions have gone away, so now I just eat. And it's unbelievable, man. And I used to have this, I was an actor. I'm still an actor, although I never work. And so I used to have this built-in thing, like not to get fat, right? Because the only thing stronger than my desire to ingratiate myself is my desire to look good. So the only thing that keeps me away from the pound cake is the thought that I might be on screen tomorrow, and without that thing there, I'm in the pound cake. There was a guy that I got sober with who said to me, and he was 5 years sober when I got sober, and this man helped me more than any man has ever helped me in my life, and he did it unconditionally. I thought his job was to help me. I mean, I really did, because I would call him up and he would be there. He'd answer the phone whenever I called him. If I was having a problem, he'd be there. He'd like, where are you? 80th and Broadway, he was there. I thought his job literally was to take care of Chris. But I found out later that, and of course I'd been looking for someone like that my whole life. But I found out later he was doing that for like 8 or 9 other guys. He had a regular job selling insurance. And he was just doing what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is unconditionally be of service to one another. I don't know any other place on the planet where that actually happens. In any event, he said to me early on, they said there was water up here. They lied. It's on the bottom or the top. There's like one half done here. Oh, down here. It's there. See, I still don't trust anybody or anything. No, I trust AA. I did trust AA. In any event, he said to me, what did he say to me? What was I talking about? Jesus Christ. You know, I smoked angel dust for 2 years every single day. Every single day, and that is not a lie. I went to Disneyland with Elizabeth Taylor high on angel dust. Okay, top that. I'll tell you, man, on angel dust, even It's a Small World is great. In any event, he told me, I don't remember what he said. He said, today, he looked at me with that thing that we get in our eyes, you know, that thing where we're like, you know, we're the newcomer that's like so ripe that just wants this thing more than, I can't see the fucking clock, can I? I'm usually not this crazy. I'm a little crazy tonight. Anyways, I'll tell you the watch story in a second. Anyways, he said to me, looked at me in the eyes, and you know, I was like, I was one of the, I needed this program. And if you can't already tell, I definitely needed this program. He said, today, I relish my insanity. And I looked at him and I went, oh my God, thank God. He said that because, like, when I got here, why doesn't this thing stay up? There you go. See, you just got to be forceful. In any event, he knew that that would appeal to me. Because when I got here, I thought, like a lot of us do, that my life was over. I literally thought, see, I thought I was this junkie alcoholic who had this amazing life. I couldn't get up off the couch to walk the dog, but I had this like amazing life. And truth be told, and I'll get into it a little bit because I do share my experience, strength, and hope here. So, and where I got sober in New York and Boston. And in those places, they keep it green. They don't, you know, they don't spend a lot of time on recovery. They spend a lot of time on like what it was like, and God, I don't want to go back there. But you know, so I, you know, and I grew up in AA hearing, if you don't remember your last drink, you haven't had it yet. Not sure I believe that. I don't really know. But anyways, I will talk a little bit about where I come from. But in this guy telling me that he relished his insanity, what he said to me was, that illusion that I had, that I had this amazingly romantic, passionate, interesting life, wasn't over. You know, and all of us who stay sober know that's true. But when you just walk in here, you're like, dude, I'm in a church basement with a bunch of people that, you know, seem crazy, and what's going to happen to me? And you know, you're going to get rocketed into the fourth dimension, and you're going to get a life beyond your wildest dreams and all of that, because it's true, and it's happened for everybody I know. So anyways, I was obsessing about what to wear, and I was driving over here, and I was thinking to myself, what are you going to say? And then I started to, you know, all of this stuff started coming into my head. 19 years of Alcoholics Anonymous and 17 years of using. That's a long time. That's my life. And I got, you know, 30 minutes to say something and I want to be funny. I want to be passionate. I want to help somebody. I want you guys to invite me back. You know, even though I don't want to come here. So I'm doing this like Robin Williams sober monologue all the way here. And that is alcoholism. That is why I drank, because I can't shut this off. This, 19 years later, Now, there are ways to do it, by the way. You guys know what the steps are, right? I mean, there's the 11th step. The 11th step is the balls. I don't do it. I don't do it. I did it for 6 years. And it changed my life. But I don't like being that comfortable. I really don't. So the guy who's driving over here, obsessing about the clothes and what he's going to say, and what are you going to throw me out? But I'm driving over here insane about all this stuff, and that's the way I am in every aspect of my life. If I'm like that about speaking at an AA meeting, which is, quite frankly, everybody knows, the safest place in the world for an alcoholic. If I stood up here and just like whimpered, you guys would love me. I should try that sometime. But then they'd never invite me back. Anyways, and the other thing, I got here and I'm like, how long do I speak for? And Alan says, well, do you need me to signal? I don't wear a watch. So I'm like, okay, you can signal me, but I can't see you. Then my buddy Mike has a watch, so I get I'm insane for 15 minutes about the watch. What am I going to do? How am I going to get it? When am I going to be able to read his watch? I can't read his watch because it's. And then there's a big watch on the thing, a clock on the thing back there. Of course, now I can't see it, but that's pretty typical of the way things go for me. I search around for everything that's right in front of my face, and then I can see it, and then it goes away. God has a great sense of irony, especially with me. Anyways, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about where I come from so you guys know that I belong here. I'm sure that you know that already, but I was born in California, right down on this beach down here. My father, I tell this because I don't know why I tell it. Because maybe it's why they invite me to speak. My father was a movie star. My mother's brother was president of the United States. One of my jobs as a little kid was to raise a presidential flag whenever my uncle came to visit. The house that we lived in was built by Louis B. Mayer. You know, I was given everything you could possibly want in this life when I was born. And it didn't mean a thing. On the way home from the hospital, my mom and dad used to go to this place called the Beachcomber, and it was a bar with all their friends, and they brought me to the bar and put me on the bar and ordered their favorite cocktail. I suppose they thought of it as kind of a hip Malibu neonatal unit or something. It was. And both my parents, God bless them, wonderful alcoholics. Totally different in the way their alcoholism manifested, but wonderful, heartfelt, tragic people who wreaked havoc on their offspring. And, listen, they did the best they could. They absolutely did the best they could. And my father, my father and I, he wasn't meant to be a father at all. He didn't know how to do it. He was an only son, and he was an actor, and he hated me calling him Dad. He'd much rather have me call him Peter. It was like kind of a thing. And when I was about 20 years old, I came out here to live with him. My parents got divorced. My uncle was assassinated, and my mother actually left my father when she was pregnant with me. And like a good alcoholic, she went back and had 3 more children, and then wanted to leave after the 4th because she had her kids. But her brother was president of the United States. He was a Catholic president. She couldn't get divorced. And so as soon as he was killed, she was out the door. We were out the door. And I was on the beach one day, And the next day I was in the middle of Manhattan, and it was freezing, and I had no idea how I got there. And that was sort of something happened in that thing. Now, I don't understand alcoholism. I don't understand, I don't get, it's genetic. I know there's all of that, and I know it's socialized, and who knows? I just know I have it. And I got to New York, and I went to this school, and I was feeling really uncomfortable. I had these feelings of being really uncomfortable and really entitled. Those were basically my two mental states, emotional states. And I found sugar. I used to run around New York. I was in this school called the St. David's School for Boys, and we had to wear a tie, and there were these guys with rulers and the whole deal. And and I would constantly invent excuses to go out, a project. I had to go out and get some scissors, and I would go to Lamston's and buy 400 bags of sugar babies and bring them back. And I ate these things, and I don't think sugar is the same as heroin, but on some level it is. It was just a natural progression for me. When I was 13 years old, I had these 3 apostles in New York, and they were, what were they? Mark, Peter, and who was the other apostle? John. Yeah. So, and they were 13, and we were in 8th grade, and they started experimenting with LSD. Now, they kept trying to get me to do it with them, but I knew inside of me, that little God thing inside of you, that little voice inside of you that we learn about in AA? Well, I had that back then, and I knew it was in there, because it said to me, Chris, you don't want to do that. And it said it very loudly and very definitively. I listened to it for 4 months. And then one day, I was walking down a road in Westchester County on a beautiful fall day, and they said, are you in? At 13 years old. And I said, yeah. What the hell? And that was all it was. It was just that. It was that easy. I went home, I did the thing. I spent 6 hours laughing and seeing colors, and I was done. And that was, for the next 17 years, the only thing that mattered to me was where I was going to get my next drink and my next drug. Now, I was one of those alcoholics. I was kind of a functional alcoholic in the sense that I came from this incredible family that was really well known and really accomplished, and I aspired to that. I aspired to all that was good in that. And I knew that in order to pick up the mantle, so to speak, or to be involved, that you had to keep it kind of together. You had to go to school, and you had to, and so I did all that. I went to school, I got the grades, I cheated, because, that was kind of part of the plan. But I did whatever I needed to do to get by, but I got by. And, from the moment, I remember going to, my mother shipped me off to prep school when I was 14, and I arrived at that school, and it was, one of those schools in New England with the commons and the history and the great people that were there all the way back to the Mayflower and the whole deal. And I walked up to the only kid I knew there, and I said, where can I get some LSD? It's my first question. Not like, where's the gym? Where's the orientation? Where's my dorm? It was like, where can I get LSD? And he was like, he was an acid head too, but he even thought I was a little, jumping the gun just a little. And he told me, and I remember, I remember walking across the Commons. Who knows what time it is? Because I'm freaking out up here. I'm thinking I got 15? Yeah. Okay. But I won't see it, but thank you. That doesn't even look like it has dials on it. So anyways, I was walking around across this common one day. It was freezing cold, and tears were just streaming down my face. And I had this pain in my gut, like nothing I had ever felt before. And I thought I was going crazy, and I did not think I could endure this pain. And it was at that moment where drugs and alcohol, you know, they had been fun, and I had done them every weekend and stuff, but from that moment on, I never wanted to feel that pain again. And I knew where the answer was. You know, nobody was around to tell me, look, this is normal for, you know, a 14-year-old kid who's away at school or whatever, who's had blah, blah, blah. Nobody told me that. I just had this feeling, and I knew how to fix it. And that's pretty much what I did. My drug and alcohol use was linear and progressive until it wasn't anymore. I mean, I progressed from that to narcotics. Narcotics were, I was a guy who was looking to escape pain. I didn't, you know, because of this feeling in my gut, I didn't want that anymore. And then you know, you can take LSD, and sometimes you have bad trips, sometimes it's not so much fun, and I had a bunch of those. And eventually I found narcotics. And for me, that was nirvana. Now, I was a guy, just so you understand I was a pig from the gate. I mean, I was really a pig when it came to any kind of drugs. I could, you know, people told me, and everybody in this room has these stories, but you know, people told me that I was a guy who at the end of the night was still standing while everybody else was nodded out or passed out and wanted to go out and get some more drugs. And the way I used was I would get enough for a week and use it all in one night and have to do that the next day. I mean, that's just what I did. I could never, ever, ever save it. You know, I admired and envied dealers because I was like, how do they do that? I mean, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to sell drugs to you know, sustain my addiction, but I couldn't do it. I was a consumer through and through. And you know, there were some, you know, for the first 6 years, it was really kind of fun. You know, there was all the da-da-da and the Studio 54, and it was the 70s and everything. I mean, we were shooting drugs on airplanes and, you know, doing crazy stuff. It was a totally different time, and it was fun. And I, on some level, didn't think anything was wrong, and it was fine. And then one day I was in school. I was going to a college in Boston, Massachusetts, and you know, the thing about alcoholics and the thing about me was I was always I was always looking for something else, you know. And I was in this school, and I saw, you know, I should be an American Studies major, and I should go to Georgetown University because they've got a great American Studies program. And this was a well-intentioned thing. You know, I was studying history and literature at this place in Boston, and this program down there. So I hopped in on a shuttle and went down to Georgetown. And of course, I moved in next door to a commune of heroin addicts. And I mean, literally, there was like one house next to me, and that's all they did all day. And I found them like any good drug addict would. I found them as soon as I got there. And between the Jesuits and the heroin addicts, I'm sorry, the heroin addicts won, hands down. And I was with them, you know, morning, noon, and night. And about, you know, 5 months into the program, I decided the Jesuits were too hard for me. But the most important thing of that was, one day I woke up and I could not walk away from the drugs anymore. It was like, you know, I've heard addiction described as dancing with an 800-pound gorilla. Well, my gorilla went into full Macarena. It was like, this gorilla grabbed me by the neck, threw me up against the wall and said, "Bitch, you are mine." And I was. And my solution at the time was to call this doctor I had been seeing, my psychiatrist, and in Boston, and I said, "Look, I'm not feeling so good." And he said, "Well, maybe it's all the heroin you're doing." And I go, well, yeah, but what are you going to do about it? Can you prescribe something for me? And he goes, "Well, that's probably not the best solution. I said, well, it's the only solution I can come up with right now. And it was a solution that I came up with for the next 10 years. I basically ran with this thing, you know, for 10, it was not fun for 9 years. I knew when I was 21 years old that I was a drug addict. I wanted to get sober, and I spent the next 9 years trying to get sober. Now that meant I tried psychiatrists, I tried changing girlfriends, I tried changing schools, I tried going to graduate school, I tried experimental drugs. They put me on this stuff. I mean, they put me on stuff they were testing on guys who were coming back from Vietnam. This stuff called naltrexone, which is probably well in use now, but back then it was experimental. And this stuff, if you took this stuff and you weren't clean, dude, I'm telling you, this is the worst experience. I threw out beds, like whole beds were just like put out for the garbage guy the next day. And I mean, it was a nightmare, but I tell this because my desire to get sober was so strong. I mean, I tried everything. At the end, you know, I was living in Boston, and I was, you know, I could never figure out how people did their life. I was so in awe of because I had that, you know, I had this thing, better living through better chemistry. That was my credo. And I couldn't get out of the door unless I had whatever it took for me to get out the door. And when I was in law school, I went to law school and I graduated actually. And I didn't pass the bar because actually you have to be coherent to pass a bar. You don't have to be coherent to go through law school because you can get friends to do a lot of the work for you. So you don't have to be coherent. But I would go to bed and I would literally count 7, 8, 9 different substances in my body. I had heard, like when I went to law school, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go to law school. I was on the methadone maintenance thing. I did all of the nonsense. But I was having a little trouble remembering the facts. So I read this article in Time magazine about this stuff called Diaped nose spray. And they had done these studies on obese fat women with this nasal spray to try and make them less fat and less depressed. And it had made them less depressed. It hadn't done anything for the weight thing. But one of the side effects was that it made their memory unbelievable. So, but the problem was, like for a bottle this big, it cost like $100. I lived on that stuff. I lived on that stuff every day. And, you know, I was taking speed to get up, Valium to go to bed, you know, something to even me out, painkillers, you know, alcohol, cocaine, whatever. And Diaped was going to save the day. So I was living in Boston at the end, and I was literally, you know, the elevator of addiction had gone down and gone down and gone down and gone down. And to the point where basically I had decided that the only thing I knew anything about was taking advantage of my birthright, which I was really good at. Terry, I totally identify about getting people to take care of, you know, living on other people's money. I knew how to do that, and I knew about addiction. So I went to Harvard Medical School and I said, hey guys, well, I was actually being treated by a Harvard Medical School therapist. And they said, hey Chris, you know a lot of people with money. Why don't you come and do our little program and then raise a bunch of money and you can start an addiction center at Harvard. And this, of course, appealed to my sense of grandiosity. And I said, yeah, okay, great. And so I wrote everybody I knew and asked them to send me money so I could pay myself while I was working. My family and my friends, they sent all this money with these amazing notes. Like, Chris, it's so wonderful. You've turned your life around. And I was like giving methadone out to the guys. And then when everybody left, I was going in the garbage can and taking out what they hadn't drunk. I mean, talk about a level of, talk about feeling like a worm. Okay? I felt like a worm. But like any good alcoholic worm, it doesn't last that long. You know what I mean? I mean, we feel like really bad for a while, and then we get this great rationalization. So that's what I did, but that's what I was doing. And I would like bicycle around and see my therapist and go play squash, and then I'd go to Brown Steakhouse and have Brown Steakhouse was a steakhouse in Boston. They had really good steaks, I thought, but they served these drinks in these glasses like this big, and I would have 151 rum with a little splash of grenadine, because I love the whole island thing. And I'd have like 2 of those. And then I'd bicycle home really fast and burn all the alcohol out so that when I was home, I wasn't really drunk, so I could start again. And every 6 months, I'd end up in a hospital. And I wondered, how the hell is this happening? And I figured it out. Because I figured out, I literally, every winter, it seemed like it happened in winter. And see, I was born in California, and I was a beach guy. I didn't do winter well. And I had heard like this macrobiotic, I talk about, you know, if you're born somewhere, you gotta eat the food from that area. And so that made perfect sense to me. I literally thought I was ending up in these hospitals all the time because I was from California. I swear to God. So anyways, I was lying in this bed one day, and I go there with my pillow, and you know, it was not a very good hospital, because at the end, you know, after you've gone through all the hospitals and the insurance has run out and everything, you don't have any money left, so you got to go to the shitty hospitals. And you know, you go there and you've got your pillow and your toothbrush, and you're there again for the 5th time, and the nurse is looking at you like you're the worst scumbag in the world, because you're taking a bed that somebody really needs and you're just a junkie. And so you know, and I do that every 4 or 5 months, and I detox, and I'd start I'd start the whole thing over again. And one day I was in that hospital room, and this doctor, the only doctor I could never con, I was really good at conning doctors, I was excellent at it, and the only guy I could never con, and he said to me, Chris, maybe you should think about stopping drinking. And I thought, well, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict. And he goes, yeah, but you drink those rum drinks, and you get drunk, and then you want a little Coke, and then you do a little Coke, and then you need some heroin to bring you down, or whatever. And that made sense to me in my convoluted way, that I got that. So I called up this aunt of mine, God bless her, who was a terrible alcoholic and was a total family embarrassment. She was always running into somebody or something and ending up on the front page of the newspapers. And she took me to an AA meeting. And I walked in, I talked to her the other day, and she's never been able to stay sober. And I'm writing this book, and she sent me this wonderful note when I was newly sober, and she sent me a note from China, and she said, there are no meetings over here, only political indoctrination meetings. And I asked her if I could use it in the book, and she said yes, but her kids now have custody of her, because she's never been able to stay sober. And she took me to an AA meeting, and I walked into this cafeteria in Cambridge City Hospital, where I had done all of my nonsense, the big, you know, Center on Addiction at Harvard Medical School, and the you know, all of the nonsense. And I sat in this thing in the back row, and I heard this guy talk about heroin and alcohol, and I was dumbfounded, because up until that moment, if you can believe it, I thought I was the only person on this planet with this problem. I really honestly believe that. I was so self-centered. I literally thought, now, you know, I told you I come from this amazing family, and that I got a lot of attention growing up. But I literally thought everybody woke up every day and wondered what I and my family were doing that day. And I swear to God, I swear to God. And this guy, the guy who said I relish my insanity today, one day he looked at me and he said, you know what, Chris? There are 1 billion people in China who don't know who the fuck you are or who your family is. And it was a great gift, you know. It was a great, amazing gift. And I walked into that meeting, and something happened to me. I didn't get sober then. Something happened to me where I understood for the first time, well, what happened to me was Alcoholics Anonymous ruined my drinking and my drugging. Because I knew there was a solution. See, I had tried everything and nothing had worked. So therefore, there was no solution. You know, I was just like, oh, I'm just a victim of my disease. And I saw a bunch of people who were not victims of their disease. They were sober. Now, of course, their circumstances weren't as unique as mine. I mean, they didn't have this to deal with and that to deal with. So I sat in the back. I'd go to a meeting once a week, and I'd listen to the story, and if the guy had a great war story, what time is it?
You got 2 minutes.
No, fuck. 2 minutes? Okay, anyways, I went in and I got sober. Okay. I kept going. The point is, they said, bring your ass to a meeting, have smart feet, sit in the seat, you're gonna get, and that's all I did. One day, and what happens is if anybody's in this room and they're still using and they're trying to control their drug use and all that kind of stuff, that is misery. That's even worse than being in the gutter, like strung out or with a bottle in your face 24/7. Because controlling this thing is a bear. On February 17th, 1986, I was standing in my living room in Boston, Massachusetts, looking at Commonwealth Avenue, and it was freezing outside, and it was done. I was done, and I was going to put a gun in my mouth. But I didn't have a gun, and I'm also a chicken, so the only thing that I could do was to turn my will and my life over to this cousin of mine who I had run with, who I didn't want to give him any power over me, and do what he told me to do. And he told me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous because he said, that's the one thing you haven't really done. And that's what I did. And I went to AA, and I was so desperate that I was willing to do whatever you people told me to do. I don't care. You could have told me to crawl on my belly over broken glass from here to New York. I would have done it. I remember one day I was a model. I was trying to be an actor and everything, and I was doing this photo shoot with like one of these supermodels, and I was, making faux love to her all day, and I was like so aroused, and like I called my cousin up and go, I don't know what to do, this girl, and he said, you gotta give it up, because if you are unfaithful in your marriage, you'll probably feel guilty, you'll drink, it's the end of your sobriety. I was willing to give it up. In that willingness, I didn't have to. In that willingness, I didn't have to. I got sober with my girlfriend, wife at the time, Jeannie, who was with me for 5 years of craziness, and we got married and we had 3 kids, and none of my kids have seen me drunk. None of my kids have seen me drunk. I have a 17-year-old, I have a 15-year-old girl, and I have a 10-year-old boy. And that's an enormous blessing because I grew up in a house that was completely alcoholically dysfunctional. Now, they've seen me crazy. And they see me wrong. 3 years ago, I left that house. And I caused an enormous amount of pain. And I left it for very specific reasons. And, it was a really hard thing. In sobriety, this guy who helped me, the Relish Your Insanity guy, said to me, he goes, you're going to get to realize all your greatest fears in sobriety. It's like, what? What? I don't want to do that. And he was right. I've gotten divorced. I've run out of money. I've had hepatitis C. I haven't gotten what I wanted in my career. And it's all fine. And I get these gifts. I get all the time. I get these things where my plans and my designs are not what comes. It's not what God wants. And I am still an incredibly willful, self-centered alcoholic 19 years later. I've worked the steps. I've worked a lot of 4 steps on a lot of things. And God, I wish that stuff, once it's buried, it stays buried. But that's not the way it works. I get what I've always wanted was just peace. I just want peace now. I don't want anything else. Well, they say that thing like holding on your nails, you're just like, anyways, I really do want peace. And I think that's what God brings us to. And I said, but now it's gone. It's gone. I'm back in the shit. I don't know what I'm doing. Did I make mistakes? Oh no, I'm like an idiot. I'm like doing this stuff and everything's wrong. And oh my God, what's going to happen to me? And then in the moment, I think, it's okay. You're sober. You're sober, and you can work through this. I heard a guy at Brentwood the other night. He goes, courage is not running in the face of fear. I have enormous fear about a lot of things today. And today it's an opportunity to think about, to make things better, to change, maybe to to do stuff, to move. I got to, am I done? I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and all I wanted was a really big, full life. And that's what I got. Thanks.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.